German colleagues, did you think that the representation of Germany was fair? Or biased? Do you think it was balanced?
I think it was true, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what the Chancellor said is completely true, because I think he's only referring to domestic problems.
Yeah.
And I think the phrase she wanted the other day about how multiculturalism had failed, I think it's good doing, yeah.
But when you consider how German people imagine the whole business of their identity, and by the way, I put a word there on the board, which is Aussiedler. This is the word used in German to refer to ethnic Germans who have returned to Germany from countries like Romania, Kazakhstan and Russia, mostly from the former Soviet Union. And they have, until recently anyway, a more or less automatic right of return because of their German ethnicity. I think it's fair to say that in the German mind, it is ethnicity which matters when it comes to citizenship, whereas Turks, for instance, or other people don't have the same rights, or have changed so much now that it's not no recognition of rights. Anybody else have a view about it? Go back and talk about that these arguments are part of the backdrop which led to a switch in British thinking with more emphasis on the core values and less emphasis on diversity. So looking for a new balance. And one of the things the British have actually brought in is a citizenship test. And what they have done is they have asked, and I'm going to ask you to do a small exercise in a few minutes, the British have basically said, in order to be accepted as full members of society, and Goodhart says this in his thinking, people should know something about the history of Britain, its background, what matters to British people culturally. If we look, for instance, I think it's there, here we are, this is the teaching of British history. And he actually says, in particular, the history of the empire and of subsequent immigration should be a central part of the school curriculum. At the same time, immigrants should be encouraged to become part of the British we. That kind of we is very important. Who are the we? Even while bringing their own very different perspective on its formation. The ideas of fostering a common culture to public policy. So, while we recognise that people come from different places and have different cultures, what we're driving towards is a common culture, a shared idea of belonging, a shared idea of who the we are. He goes on to suggest why not have a British national holiday to address this, or a State of the Union address, as the Americans have on an annual basis. So he's trying to change the parameters of the debate away from just talking about diversity or just talking about assimilation, but saying that there is a middle way which we need to find, which makes people feel at least they're part of a common society. But of course it's problematic as well. When he says, for instance, in particular history of the empire should be taught, there's a question there, how do we teach something like the history of the empire? Do we teach it from many points of view? Or do we teach it as one single narrative of conquest and imperialism by the British? And that's problematic. So let's have a look at some of the questions which the British introduced. What they said was, well, people should know something about citizenship. And therefore let's ask them, let's have a test. And there is now a citizenship test for any migrant outside the EU, because we don't have to do it, who wishes to become a permanent resident of British society. And here are some examples. And these are tests which obviously are based on the notion that you should, as a migrant who's going to live in Britain, know something about British history. Let's see how many people know the answers to all of these. The origins of our Parliament, this is the British Parliament, were in the early Middle Ages. In 1215, the great barons forced rights from the tyrannical King John. What is that document called? The Mathemundii, the Magna Carta of Bill of Rights. So what's the answer?
Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights? Anybody else? Magna Carta, okay, yeah, it is Magna Carta. Bill of Rights is a more recent concept. That's not probably too difficult a question, but I'm asking you to think about the underlying ideas behind this. I mean, should you really, or somebody can be regarded as the fit person to live in contemporary British society in 2010, do they need to know that something had happened 9 centuries ago? I don't think they do. You may do, and that's a matter that people disagree on. Let's look at another one. When did all 18-year-olds get the vote in the UK? And you have three dates there, 1918, 1928, or 1969. What's the answer? 1969, anybody else? Are you all agreeing 69? Yeah, 69 is correct. Incidentally, what's the significance of the date 1928? Does anybody know that? Women got the vote. Yes, but they already got the vote. But what happened in 28? Yes, they got the vote under the same terms and conditions as men, because before that there was a difference in the qualifications on gender grounds from 1918 onwards. Okay, you did pretty well with that. I love this one. Yeah, you couldn't make this up, actually. Life in the UK is the name of the document produced by the Home Office, which is part of the background to prepare yourself for this test. So this one here, what you do if you spill someone's pint in the pub? It doesn't make certain assumptions about, alcohol, its role in public life. We're not making this up. I lifted this, I have to admit, from the Guardian newspaper, but it's a real question. What, according to the book, this is Life in the UK, usually happens next. A, you would offer to buy the person another pint. B, you would offer to dry their wet shirt with your own. And C, you may need to prepare for a fight in the park. It illustrates the kind of absurdities that can arise when we try to sort of think about what is common culture. I mean, if you look at the Irish case, who are the we? Does becoming Irish mean the right to go out to Washington Street and get pissed out of their minds every Thursday night? I'm not suggesting for 1 second that people in this class will ever do that. But it illustrates the nature of the challenge in defining common identity. Here's one, I think I'll ask our guests to answer this one. There are 4 national feast days in the UK, one for each nation. Which order do they fall in the calendar? St. Andrews, St. Patrick's, St. David's and St. George's. St. George is the feast of what country? The patron saint of St. Andrew. Yeah, we know that from golf, I suppose. Which leaves us with St. David's and St. Patrick's. I don't have to ask you that. Does anybody know the answer to that question? Is it A, this is the order in the year, in other words, the order within the calendar, the annual calendar within which these feast days fall? I'm going to ask Brian Lamkbin here because he's the general archer of visiting British expert.
Right, well, nobody ever knows when no English person ever knows when St. George's Day, but I know that St. David's Day is the 1st of March.
Very good.
And I think all the others must be after that. St. Patrick's Day is the 17th of March. St. George's is in April the 23rd or the 25th, and St. Andrews is in November, I think.
Right.
Is that right? So B. So I'm going for B.
You have it right as far as I'm worried. I had to look this up myself. But the point really that is being made here is that you could ask that question and stop people in the street anywhere in Britain. 99% of people will not know the answer to that.
Afraid that's right, yeah.
So is the bar being set higher for the would-be migrant in terms of expertise and knowledge about British customs and information and history and so on than it would be for the ordinary person in the street who doesn't know these things either? Is it, in other words, an artificial exercise designed to reassure, for instance, a nervous population that, look, these migrants will be all right, they fit in? That's the kind of thing which is raised, I think, by Goodhart's question. Right, now what I want to do really now, just for the last, how much have we got? We've got about 10 minutes. I want to divide the class again as I've done in the past, but not in those of you who are sitting together, that would make it far too easy. And I want you to consider a number of questions. I want you to come up with about 3 questions which would be on the Irish citizenship test. So you need to think about what defines Irishness. You can do this as a serious exercise or a humorous exercise, I really don't mind. But I want you to think of 3 questions which would somewhat resemble the ones that we've just seen there. And we'll have about 6 or 7 minutes to do it. And then we'll try and take it before the end of class. If not, we'll take it the next week. So just, how many of you are there? About 30 here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the ones in this corner, all the 2s down here. All the 3s up here. All the 4s over here. The 5s down there in the middle and the 6s over here. Come on, schnell, move. Now each group will need a rapporteur, somebody who writes them down. And report back. Off we go. Where are the 6s?
Over there, one question.
Nominate somebody to write down questions and possible answers. So you get disqualified from the right hand garden. Okay, you get it. Are we getting on? Okay, you're taking it more serious now. Don't let them About 5 minutes for this one, and then we have a quick feedback. Okay, can we ask everyone to sit down again? We haven't had this question quickly. Would you all take your seats? Does anybody need to go easily to the lecture theatres and do these? Feel free. Alright. So let's just very briefly change to different groups and what questions we go. Everyone should have a rapporteur, so each group should have somebody to report back. So let's take your seats. It's going to take about 2 minutes. Okay, can we have a group number? Yeah, we'll sit down first. Right, Tom, thanks, Stephanie. First of all, thank you all very much. Right, group number 6. Who's group number 6 person? The school person. Let's hear it.
What date was in Patrick on?
Okay. That's kind of bad. So are you giving a choice? Or are you just asking them to know? Alright. I have a few more?
Yeah. Name 3 Irish drinks.
3 Irish drinks, yeah, okay. I think everyone knows that. Any more?
What political party most power?
Yeah, that's a relevant question. I mean, you could say that's a fair question because it concerns everyday practical politics. Whereas maybe the Magna Carta might be as important to people living in Britain today. But asking who's in power in any country is an important matter. All right, any more? Okay, group number 4. Group number 4. Yeah. Okay.
At what time do the pubs close?
Of course, the time the law says and the time they actually close is not necessarily.